Policies evolve. Language adapts. Updates are normal, but sometimes a revision changes much more than just the wording. This is the story of a policy that was rewritten overnight. It all started with a brief notification. Routine. Administrative. The email simply said, effective immediately. No transition period. No public explanation. Just a new version of the policy replacing the old one. If you weren't paying close attention, you might have missed it entirely. And that, it seems, was the point. At first glance, the changes seemed minor, almost insignificant. A paragraph was shortened here. A requirement was rephrased there. A key definition was broadened. It looked like simple housekeeping. The kind of bureaucratic tidying up that happens all the time. But anyone who works with policy knows that subtle wording shifts can redirect entire frameworks. The devil, as they say, is in the details. Let's break down what really changed. Where the old policy used language of obligation words like shall and must. The new version introduced discretion. Words like may and can suddenly appeared, giving decision-makers wiggle room where none existed before. Where there was once clarity and specific benchmarks, there was now flexibility and room for interpretation. The solid ground of the old rules had been replaced with something far more fluid. To understand why this happened, we need to look at the context. This rewrite didn't happen in a vacuum. It came shortly after a controversial project was quietly abandoned. It came after a series of difficult questions from oversight committees went unanswered. It came after a silent, behind-the-scenes decision was made by a handful of people at the top. The rewrite wasn't a direct reaction to any single event, but rather a calculated refinement of power. Officially, the narrative was one of modernization. The organization claimed it was updating outdated language to be more agile and responsive to a changing world. Internally, however, it was a recalibration. The new language wasn't just clearer, it was a tool. It shifted authority from one department to another. It adjusted the thresholds that triggered reviews and investigations. It expanded the scope of interpretation, allowing for actions that would have been explicitly forbidden under the previous version. Think about it this way. Imagine a rule that says, all expenses over $100 shall require pre-approval. It's clear, it's absolute. Now, imagine that rule is changed too. Significant expenses may require managerial review where appropriate. What is significant? Who decides what's appropriate? The power has shifted from the rule itself to the person interpreting it. That's the kind of change we're talking about. There was nothing dramatic enough to make the news headlines. No scandal. No public outcry. But the changes were enough to fundamentally reshape outcomes for years to come. Cases that would have been opened would now be closed. Projects that would have been blocked would now proceed. Decisions that would have required broad consensus could now be made by a single individual. The entire balance of power within the system was altered, almost invisibly. And once the new policy was published online, the previous version quietly disappeared. It wasn't just moved to an archive. It was scrubbed from the public-facing servers. All links to the old document suddenly led to a 404 not found error. This is a crucial part of the strategy. Speed limits scrutiny. An overnight update minimizes comparison. When you can't easily put the old and new versions side, it's much harder to spot the differences and even harder to analyze their impact. It reduces resistance. It avoids debate. By morning, the new policy felt established. It was the new normal. And the old one, it already felt outdated, like a relic from a different era. the institutional memory began to fade almost immediately. New employees would only ever know this version. Within a year, very few people would even remember the way things used to be. This story reveals a profound truth about how power operates. History doesn't always change through grand, revolutionary reversals. It doesn't always happen with a loud bang. Sometimes, it changes through quiet revision. It's not about being louder or bigger. It's just about being different. And as this case shows, sometimes different is more than enough to change everything. What this teaches us is the importance of paying attention. It's about reading the fine print, questioning the official narrative, and understanding that the most significant changes are often the ones that are presented as the most mundane. Because the pen, when it revises a policy overnight, can indeed be mightier than the sword. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration of power and language interesting, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the systems that shape our world. We'll see you in the next one.